Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of this still currently unnamed podcast of the channel Kingdom of Athelas 2 and the World of Fellowmind books. Today, we are going for a similar format to the first episode, where it is just myself chatting with a good friend, and the same slideshow is going to be up because honestly, I'm still not savvy enough in the editing to come up with anything more creative for now. So I am going to let my friend introduce himself from the lovely nation of Sweden.
Thank you. Nice for having me here. It's really great, I must say. My name is Pepe, but you can also call me Johan, my real name there. And yeah, I'm from Sweden, and I'm 21 years old. Just making it out in the big world of ours.
Well, the format is going to be similar, the topics are going to be similar, so I'm going to save the introduction that I did at the last video and just get straight into it. So, as a general case, because this is a bit different where we're a lot similar in age than the previous video, so
Yeah.
as as a fellow 21-year-old, what's just your opinion of how the youth, what the youth are basically having to grow up with in our world?
Well, there's a lot of different opinions you can have there. And, well, my opinion is somewhat neutral, I'd say. Because if you look anywhere during the history with different ways people have been brought up, right? There's always been like problems for everyone in society after all. I feel like we might be the some of the people that have the most bright future if we just do things right. As long as politicians just aren't like 80 or 90-year-olds leading us to destruction, right? So I'd say I'm quite positive about how we're brought up, but there's a lot of things that could be better. But as of now, I'd say we probably have the best time because right now, if the biggest problem is where we can be offended in life, and that's a big problem for you, I'd say you must have a pretty good life. And if you're having a worse life than that's like starving, yeah, that's a big problem. But here in the West, we have a really good life, almost too good of life. And some people needs a reality check. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, the point on there that stood out to me was the idea of potential and everything. And yeah, I would say we've grown up in, well, pretty much in the what has been the 2000s so far, and it has given a lot of potential for people to do what they're choosing to, and that is really good. There's a lot of opportunities and there's a lot of things, but there is there is the issue, at least over here. I don't know how much it's an issue over in Sweden, where you have the opportunities and you have the potential going down all these amazing roads and everything to do so many different things that weren't possible to do like 10, 20 years ago. But yet, despite all the new opportunities, there's still almost the, not really the foundations, but the organizations and groups that are sort of meant to be there to try and encourage these opportunities to try and bring forth this new age and the new innovations, they still have quite a bit that is outdated and is from, again, like 10, 20, maybe even 30 years back. And it's almost like the system and the foundations that are there to support, whilst some of it has shown that it has grown alongside the increase of opportunities, that's not the case for all of it. And unfortunately, I think for a lot of people over here, we tend to run into the more outdated side of that than the newer bit. But there is no denying that the potential is there, and I I actually went back and had a meeting at my old secondary school last week, and the meeting was just talking about what I've been doing since leaving and everything, and it was quite amazing to see that the school that is arguably still rated one of the best schools in the area was still open and fully willing to change around in response to what happened, like with the lockdowns and COVID and everything. That they've now turned around and are giving such an incentive and a focus over encouraging what the students there are looking to do, instead of almost offering up all these opportunities for potential roads they could go down. They're almost asking the question, is like, instead of, oh, you've got all these options you can go down, is more asking, what do you want to go down and how can we help you get to there?
Yeah, I fully agree that there's a lot of the same stuff here over in Sweden, where they do basically the same. But there's also a majority of problems where we have a lot of teachers not really caring about actually helping students, which I see is probably the biggest problem for a teacher if they can't really teach, right? So I see a lot of my friends, they usually come out of school with no ambitions and no goals in life except for just I just want to get by in life, nothing else. They don't really want to better anything. They just want to find some spouse. They want some job, and they want to make some money, and nothing else. They don't really want to do anything great with what they have. Like I have several mates who's just dropped out of school for no reason, just because they didn't like going to school. And I think we need to make it more enjoyable somehow for students to actually want to go to school.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah.
yeah. There's we. I don't know, like, again, how it lines up between different nations, like, but various ones have that issue of people dropping out for no real reason. But it's almost like, again, I don't want to keep repeating the word outdated, but that sort of tunnel visioned kind of mindset that gets dug in sometimes of, you go to school to learn. No, you go to school to start forging your life. And yeah, like the sense of almost, like you said, about your friends, like several friends dropping out, or, well, actually, I'll touch on that in a sec. Just focusing on the bit of them leaving school with no real ambition or anything, no real drive to encourage or change. I'd say over here, probably because of what the year group of people who are 21, 22 now, and then those that came after us, we probably have some of the best reasons to have left school with that kind of ambition or
Yeah.
lack of ambition, because we left school straight into lockdown to the extent where our final year got shortened by about 2 months, and our exams just got take our final exams, the things that you build up for several years, just removed, just and there was nothing that we could do to change that or stop that. And so there's plenty of reason and understanding over here and in the Netherlands, where I know a similar thing happened, and I think also in Cyprus,
Yeah.
where you could have that opinion, and honestly, you'd be in the right to have it because of how much you had been messed over by the not even your teachers, but by the people above your teachers and the people at the schools, because they had no control over it either.
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel sorry for my the head teacher who was there when I did leave, because he came in he came into that position a month before the lockdown.
Oh, that's unlucky.
So there is plenty of validation for all of that, but touching on the idea that they just don't leave without any ambition or anything, there's there is a big mindset, and I don't know how much the mindsets in this sort of style in the East. I assume there's probably a good majority of it as well, but
Yeah.
we've had it in the West. We've had it with student climate protests and things that have happened in the last few years, and it's the idea that there is a growing amount of us that understand that the world is there are good elements, but there is also elements that do desperately need fixing,
Exactly.
and a lot of it is falling down to us. But then, if you're coming out of education, but because of your experiences there, because again, a lot of the ambition, some of it might be personal, but a lot of it is from factors out of your control. If you're coming out of your education with those sort of mindsets, then with the lack of ambition, the lack of these things are broken, I need to try and help fix them, then it's just going to, it's not going to do anything but make the problem worse. It's going to make you almost apathetic to it. And
Yeah.
it's like, obviously what I'm doing isn't like, I'm not out protecting the environment. I'm
Yeah,
not
we're not really saving the earth
yeah,
every day here.
I'm not in politics, although I do have some decent opinions. But I still see what I'm doing as helping because of the fact that I am following something that I am passionate about, and I'm following it with the intention of hopefully inspiring others to not only do things in the creative industry, but also just do things you're passionate about. And it's almost like, in my mind, that's almost the counter argument to that experience of leaving school with no ambition. It's almost like the opposite to that, where there were two roads that I could have gone down with leaving education: the apathetic one, or the I've already started this, I am going to continue it, and I am going to do this to try and stop that from happening to others. And
Yeah.
that's what I've gone down, and that's what I continue to go down. And I mean, there's also just the whole other argument of people grow up and see the world and have that, again, the apathetic attitude of not really wanting to get a particular job or everything, because probably quite a few of them see all the jobs as no different to one another because of just the case of affairs it is with so many of them now, where I mean, especially over here, where more and more people go into self-employment because it turns out to be better off for them, because
Yeah.
you've got these jobs where you are working, you have to just keep at it under the instructions of someone else. There's chances of bullying and abuse and all these different things. There's chances of your pay getting twisted and changed and all of that, or your pay just not being enough. But then you have to stick with the job because you feel like you can't go out and try and get another, or just you can't risk it. And it's it's not something that I've personally gone through, but it's a horrible thing to even just hear about, because like you like the people who this is starting to happen to, they're people that we went to school with and things like that. So it's if you're able to, because obviously you're at uni and
Yeah, exactly.
you're looking down the going into like producing
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that.
exactly,
So,
exactly, exactly.
but if you're able to, regardless of it, if it's self-employed through university or whatever, if you are able to get the job that you are passionate about, the one that you have set out to do, go for it.
Yeah,
Don't
exactly.
and
That's what I mean about people not having ambition sometimes when they come out of school. Because they could just aim higher, but they just don't try to go for it. And if you don't try, you'll never get there, right?
mm,
And I see so many, at least here in Sweden, just not doing it. The stats here in Sweden. I looked this up actually some days ago. Every fourth student in secondary school actually stops going. They just quit, and having a fourth of your population not finishing secondary school, that kind of that's kind of bad in one way. That's There's so many people that just give up on any future ambitions if there isn't anything that you can learn from home, right?
yeah,
And almost every workplace today actually needs at least that you have finished secondary school to be employed. So a lot of my friends who just haven't done that, they're just jobless. They have nothing to do. Some of them has actually gone homeless by now, and I just find it crazy that people around our age just have nothing left to live for at this early stage. It's like we barely started living, right?
yeah, yeah,
It's like we've just come to the stage of where we can start living.
yeah. The thing you touched on just back about like maybe a minute, a few seconds ago was the thing about them dropping out from because
Yeah,
of like learning stuff from home. And I I don't know how much that's an attitude in other nations, but I've seen it on and off here from various different sources and different experience that other people have had, where and sometimes you can even see it reflected from the students, but you can almost tell that that question has been asked to them and they've passed it on. It's not one they've come up with, but it's the idea of the education system. It teaches all these different things and everything, but then you have the attitudes of people who are older who question what after we leave school and everything, why don't we know how to do this or why don't we know how to do that? And it's because one of two things normally. Either with those specific kind of things, either they were down a different education path that we took because they didn't line up with what we wanted to do, but that's the rarer option. The more common option is those things just aren't taught anymore.
yeah,
And it it is it is a problem. I mean, back in GCSE maths, it's like GCSE maths. Fair enough. You could maybe start looking into things like home economics or things like that. And especially since we had a issue over here where the difficulty actually got ramped up to a really stupid level, because universities were complaining, or certain universities were complaining, or something
Yeah.
along those lines. But you had that happen, but instead of it being over something that you can actually properly apply to real world, bear in mind this is at a time where this is at an age where at the time maths was still compulsory, like there was no choice, you had to do it. So that's
It's not
yeah,
compulsory any longer in England.
it is, and I think they actually moved it up to 18 now.
Okay.
But which is even dumber, to be honest. But
Yeah.
the whole thing is like the difficulty got ramped up, and we were learning about things like trigonometry. Where do you apply something that niche when it comes to things like home economics or things like that, things
Yeah,
that aren't
honestly.
taught? And
That's
it
more engineering
yeah,
than
yeah.
like
So
anything else.
So arguably, if you were to do something like that, you would leave it for like the higher level where people are choosing maths because it's to do with what they actually want to do, that they have actively chosen it.
Yeah.
And but instead is like instead it's just a case that even at the times where it's compulsory, you're still learning about stuff that is relevant to only a niche amount of the people in that classroom. And instead of something that could benefit all of you. And obviously, that doesn't boil down to the teachers either. That boils down to the education system behind the scenes and what they decide goes on the questions and everything.
Yeah.
So, but it is things like that are absurd because on the one hand, you don't get taught those things. And then on the other, when you leave education, you still have those people around who moan at you and ask why you don't know these things. They don't, but instead of actually taking that complaint towards the people who have actually made that the case, they do it to the people who had no control over it.
Yeah,
And
exactly. Like they're just blaming the people that just are trying to do their work and nothing else.
yeah, and the the apathy idea and just leaving the school with no ambition, nothing left, and everything. It's something that I think gets. I mean, I had no idea about how high it was over in Sweden, but I think just almost everywhere in the West it's probably a case and something that probably everywhere gets overlooked.
Yeah, I think it's probably similar, I'd say. But
Hang on, I'll see if I can find the
yeah,
UK statistics.
yeah.
A oh, okay. I was going to read what it was, but then I realised the report I was looking at was from 2012. It's a little bit out of
Oh.
date.
Yeah, just a little bit, just like 11 years too late.
Okay, well, this isn't so much a this isn't so much a jump out at them leaving school too early, but this is leaving education before going into university. So it's a little bit different, but it's still like this is back in 2019 and it was an analysis from 2018, and it was 1 in 5 left education at 18. So 1 in 5 children, students left
That's
left
crazy.
left education instead of going to university, and I'd say there's several different reasons for that. Obviously, you have the factor of where it comes to some, where some obviously end up getting occupied with
Yes.
relationships and things like that, and
And some
children.
just get jobs immediately after.
Yeah, some get jobs, and then you have the idea that people. I don't know if that includes gap years or not. I'm going to assume it probably doesn't. But
Yeah.
you've got the case that people decide, they look at the two and they think, I'm gonna go job, going to look at a job. But I also think the other thing that is quite relevant to bring up is probably student debts, and not so much them impacting immediately, but just the fear of them.
Yeah. And that's very understandable because we hear that from everyone, I'd say, that's gone to uni about their debt and to never really loan money uh, for your education. Even here in Sweden, where we have a pretty good system when it comes to actually um, the payments and stuff, because we don't have to actually take loans. We have something called CSN, which like we get somewhat of like a good amount of money, depending on our work and just what we're studying somewhat. And yeah, like me, I still live at home right now. I'm gonna move out later, so I'm gonna have to take loans next year. But right now, I get like 500 quid for just studying, and that stuff I'm never gonna have to pay. But everyone's still talking about the loans and don't take too much. Live on the lowest amount so you can pay back as quick as possible. And I find many have a lot of fear, but there's also a lot of people who just doesn't care, at least here in Sweden, about the loans because we still have our good system. But I think the older generations scare the younger about putting yourself in debt too much. Because then you see, you always see, we actually have, or think we had a channel or yeah, a channel called Lyxfällan, where people always would be like hell of a lot of debt down the drain, and these people who never finished secondary school. So it's rarely anyone who's actually gone to uni. So I think putting fear in people about taking loans for something that's good isn't something you should have to worry about. Um, but yeah, that's how I think about it, because we have a pretty good system, as I said.
Yeah, I think it it's to do with money again, so it connects to the
Yeah,
debt thing. But I think another possible attitude, in certain areas, not all, but again, like the older scaring younger, is when, and this isn't everyone by any stretch of the imagination, but it's when they say that, it's almost when they hammer in the things that you already know are true, and it's that you need money to live, you need to be
yeah,
earning more money, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do that, and it's unnecessary pressure, because you every time, like, they get that, every single time someone our sort of age receives that kind of pushback or pressing, all it does is it it can either cause a stand ground mentality where you're like you stand up for what you're doing and everything and you do that, or it can back the person into a corner. And
Yeah.
the case is that you're the repeating, and especially for those of us who pay attention to what's happening in the world and everything, we know this. We know what's going on, but we're not just seeing what's happening, ignoring it, and then doing something that's completely irrelevant. No, we're seeing what's happening, and we're doing what we believe is right for us to try and allow us to live in this chaos. And I mean, because I think the thing that is missed by quite a few people is that you need to, and the hammering home of the things that we already know are true about the money and the money and the money. And it's like, we're turning around and we're saying to you, you're arguing for us to earn more money by doing this and this and this. Well, this and this and this doesn't give us the money that is needed to live anymore.
Yeah.
And that's the almost like the vital point that certain people can miss, is that money may have existed in these positions years ago. It doesn't anymore. And ultimately, if you are someone who is doing something you're passionate about or working hard or something, or even in university and studying hard at something, but you're getting that pressure about the money and the money, so then you have to either split your focus or drop what you're doing to go and do something else, it's not going to change your position. Because
because all they do is just say what you already know, and
yeah,
it's not informative in any way.
yeah, and it's all
you continue.
yeah, it's also interesting when people like that do those sort of criticisms, but then you argue on the stand ground mentality, you argue for what you're doing, and they argue against it. At no point do they try and almost go onto the same page of, you're doing this, let's see how we can make more money out of it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I do want to stress, like, from my perspective, coming from it and everything, that I do have values and I do have things when it comes to my work that I hold to a higher importance than earning money from my work, which means there will be certain things that I am never willing to do. Because like the integrity of my work is way more important.
Yeah.
But because I will take my personal thing for a moment. I studied at A level. I studied philosophy and ethics, history, government and politics. If I was to go into a well-earning career in any of those, which I understood, I did know this at the time, and I was fully aware of this, that would have involved me going to university or doing like an open university degree, most likely. And I understood that. I understood that when I made my choices. But the thing at the time I didn't appreciate and didn't understand because it hadn't happened yet was A, what I'm doing now, because that wasn't a factor then, but also B, and I can't stress this enough, but it would be how, not disenchanted, but how much my faith in the education system over here would drop after the mess with our exams.
Yeah.
And it, because you can look at that and think, oh, it was one issue and you got done a bad deal, but that's fair enough. But then you go back and you start adding in all the other things that happened to our year group, our sort of generation over here, and you realize that, oh yeah, we've been pushed and pulled about quite a lot. And for someone to turn around and say, and go into that mindset of, yeah, I don't want to be a part of this anymore. I don't want to go to university. Even if you take COVID out of the equation, I don't want to do this. That's a reasonable mentality to take. And obviously, the 2018 would have been 2 years. So it would have been if I had left before going into sixth form to do my
Yeah.
A levels. So it would be as if I hadn't done my A levels, but have to do A levels, so I did. And stayed at the same place, did all of that. But then, yeah, I could have continued, but by that point, I was just, yeah. And it's not, and you look out and you say, oh, what happened to your exams and everything, and what happened was them trying to make the best effort out of COVID and out of an impossible situation. Okay, then why were they only one of 3 nations in Europe to make that decision? Whereas all the other nations found some way of doing them, whether it was doing them from home or under specific circumstances, they still
Yeah.
did them. And I mean, I know because I probably was talking to you at the time about it as well,
Yeah.
and
I
I
think we were actually,
yeah,
yeah.
you were one of many people who I was talking to throughout Europe about then, and yeah, seeing your guys' reactions to when I told you what had happened was interesting to say the least. Yeah, it. Right, I'll go on to the next question now.
Oh yeah.
Do you think that there? What do you make of people who try to like push a family member or a child into a specific career, whether or not the person wants to go into it?
Well, I have two different sides of how I see on it, because in one way, like I find many of my Arabic friends, they have a lot of like mothers, dads. They always say, my child, they're gonna be a doctor, because a doctor, it pays good, it's good work, and you actually do something for society being a doctor. So I find it good in one way, but if they don't really want to be there and do it, like they should have the option to not do it. They shouldn't feel forced that it's their only option in life. I myself, I've always, I've had a pretty good position where I haven't been forced to do whatever I want to, whatever I don't want to do. But my parents always wanted me to go to like music school, because both of them are musicians, writers, and shit like that. But I was just fully done with that. I just wanted to go to a normal school, enjoy life, be a good little student, do my little stuff, and find my way through life on my own. Um, so I'd say it's better for them to make up their own decisions when it comes to how. Well, uh, I'm trying to find some words here. Yeah. Uh, so what I'm trying to say is, it's good that you try to put your child on a path for good where they can make lots of money. But if the child really doesn't want to do it, they shouldn't have to do it. And that's how I see on it.
Yeah, I it goes almost it almost circles back to like one of the key points we've talked about so far, which is the idea of ambition and things.
Yeah,
And it's the case of there's almost two pillars for it, maybe three actually. Probably ambition, resilience, and the support.
yeah,
And I would say, regardless of whatever you're doing career wise, if you have those three pillars all in place, so if you have the ambition to do and the drive to do what you're doing, if you have the resilience to not give up when you run into the brick walls or run into things that don't go the way you planned, and if you have the support in the areas that you struggle with, because regardless of what you set your mind to, whatever you try to do, you don't start out being an expert in every facet of it, and you're you're gonna need the support in some cases,
yeah,
if, regardless of if that's major or minor. But if you have those three pillars, you can you can set out and have a successful career in pretty much anything you set your mind to if you have those three pillars in place. And I think a reflection that some people feel when, even if they have the first two, but the if they have the third pillar is lacking or maybe a bit unstable, because the people are like saying it's brilliant what you're doing, but have you considered doing this, or maybe you should have done this, or I've always thought that you could have done this, and it's like even if you know that person supports you, there is the question that rings in the back of your head of, okay, but do you? Or were you saying this to try and get me to reconsider?
yeah,
And it's almost an unintentional sowing of doubt.
yeah, exactly. Um, like, as I see it, parents' main role should just be help their child to be brought up into the world and support them on their decisions. Like, sure, all decisions might not be good decisions, but you are their parents and you should support them in a way that helps them out. Maybe not how you might have intended for their life to go, but in a way that makes your child happy and makes them succeed in different ways. Because everyone has different goals in life.
Yeah, different goals, different talents. I mean, the the amount of people who you have who at like the GCSE stage they make their choices, and then they get about halfway through their GCSEs and they look back and think, I really should have taken this instead, or
Yeah,
they drop something, or they try to do four but then it proves too much for them, so they remove one and cut it back down. Um, so yeah, even in decisions that you get given in your education, it's very easy to make errors of judgment. Although in saying that, I don't forgive the people who pick an option because they think it will be easy. Because if you think
yeah,
any option's easy at GCSE, you're not taking it seriously.
yeah. Honestly,
Um,
if you're just trying to take an easy way out for life, it's just stupid
I
in
mean,
the end of everything.
I think the biggest one that I experienced with that when it came to other people was philosophy. People picking philosophy because they thought it would be easy. Yeah, no.
Yeah, I'll say it's kind of funny to see that people just think that something will be easy because how they see on a subject.
Hmm.
Because I don't know much about philosophy, right? But it's like I know nothing about it, and I will not think it's an easy way to like get anything. Um, to just go in and do that.
Yeah, and there were there were some things that I was considering taking at both GCSE and A level that I did get talked out of by teachers, and I am glad that I did
Yeah.
because I can't remember what it was, but at some point it must have been A level. Early on into trying to work out what I was going to do for A level, I was thinking about doing chemistry,
Oh,
and bearing in mind at that point I had already had my set in stone decisions of history and philosophy.
yeah,
It
exactly.
the teachers brought the other perspective of it's great that you want to do this and you did do well in chemistry, but at the same time this doesn't, maybe you may need to rethink about how this lines up to what else you're studying. And yeah, that was a good eye opener because at first I wasn't considering taking government and politics. It was actually what the teacher of it, who was also happened to be one of my old history teachers, who talks me into it, and I am quite glad that he did. So it's one of those things like it doesn't hurt to ask someone else for an opinion.
Yeah,
It doesn't hurt to ask
like
for another
it's always
perspective.
good to hear out what other people
Yeah.
think.
But as soon as that criticism starts almost translating towards this isn't constructive anymore, this is just this person trying to discourage me from doing what I'm doing. Or not, maybe not discourage, but trying to twist or sow the doubt.
Yeah,
That that line is where it becomes a problem. If it goes beyond that line, is a problem. But if it's not beyond that line and it is just constructive, like if someone's reviewing a piece of work you've done and they've thought, okay, this is interesting, but have you possibly considered doing this, like as an alternate option, or an alternate way of getting to that same answer? It's like they're showing you a different method to get to the same result. They're not showing you a different question altogether, if that makes sense. Um,
yeah, yeah.
and yeah, is there? I'm gonna rearrange the thing a bit because honestly, I have a few notes about these podcasts, but it's really only a select couple of questions, and then just let the conversation flow.
Yeah. Well,
But
it's been going well so far, I'd
yeah,
say.
but here is the interesting one. You are studying producing.
Yeah, exactly.
Why?
Well, I chose that because I was being interested in like movies and music since my parents, as I said before, are musicians. But it actually really took me a while to choose to become a producer because I always wanted to be like an engineer or something before, and I actually was studying to do some. You know those flight towers at airports, right?
Yeah,
I was studying to become one of those people. Uh, but in the middle of it, I thought, yeah, this really isn't anything for me. I want to do something that I can enjoy. And I'm always, I play the guitar, I play the piano and the drums. I like chatting with people and just planning stuff. And then I found out about this course in my city at my uni here that you can actually just become a producer. It's a good way to become a journalist or anything else like that. And it looked really interesting. And so far, I have enjoyed every minute of studying to become a producer.
Well, yeah, that's definitely an interesting little twisty turny story there.
Yeah.
Um, I I think that is I think it does get a bit under recognized how many people go through that sort of change of direction. Do I In my own case, I wouldn't really call what I'm doing a change of direction because I still have the ambition to do what I was originally planning to do just later on.
Yeah.
So mine's more of a detour than a change of direction, but it's a leisurely detour and one that I'm enjoying, and it's something I with what I'm doing. It is certainly one of those things where there are various reasons why I'm doing that harken to quite a few of the points that we've covered, but it it is also the classic one on top of all of that, where it's one of these things that if I hadn't tried, I was going to look back in about 20, 30 years and thoroughly kick myself.
Honestly, if you didn't do what you're doing right now, I'd say it would really feel like some fucking kick to the balls in the future for you. Yeah, seeing that you never did what you wanted to do, and then you get to that age where it's like you don't really have time to do that since you might have a family, kids to worry about,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's other life things.
I think that is a very good argument for anyone who's going into the creative side of things, is that if you're thinking about whenever you're thinking about doing it, you can be young, you can be old, you could be somewhere in the middle.
Yeah,
Um, Go ahead and do it because you've got these ideas now, and these ideas are unique to you. Even if it's following a format that someone else has already done, you're putting your own spin on
yeah,
it. It is creative individuality, and if you don't do that, there is no guarantee that the ideas you have at 20 or 30 you will still have at 40 or 50.
yeah, exactly.
So
And it might
it
just be that they never come to fruition if you don't
yeah,
try at
yeah,
that point.
it's the creative aspect of all of that, but it's also other things. And I think another big one that you can cover and stuff like that is sports.
Yeah,
Um, if you want to have a go at something, do it whilst you can, because obviously creative is a bit different because creative minds can go on forever sometimes, and
yeah,
you can do stuff for however you like. But sports is a very good idea, very good concept of if you want to have a go, and this doesn't even have to be career, if it's just an interest you want to take up or something, do it whilst you're young, because no matter how hard you try, eventually physically you're not going to be able to.
yeah. You can really see that in stuff like football, right? Because
Yeah.
like most of the guys, they're below 30, and those who are over, they always have some knee
So sorry,
injury.
I just need to check my door.
Oh yeah.
One second. Sorry.
Yeah, there we go. But yeah, If we look at football, most of the guys they're quite young, below 30, and like anything above, it's like you can look at Zlatan. He's 42 years old. He just retired, and seeing him play, it's like seeing some guy from the 1800s, basically. If you would put him, it's like if you would put someone from the 1800s, doing some computer stuff. You just don't see that at all. So if you don't go for it at the age you want to do it from the beginning, you might never be able to do it in the future.
Yeah. So, I didn't actually do this in the last episode, but again, I'm trying to make each episode a little bit different.
Yeah.
Um, is there anything maybe in the next, let's say, 5 years? Is there anything that you'd like to see change in not only the in people's attitudes towards the youth, not only like the youth who are before secondary school and all of that, but also like the older youth, the youth sort of our age.
Yeah. Well, there's a few things I'd actually like to see a lot more, and that's probably younger people going into politics, because when we think about politics nowadays, it's usually these old fucking sorry for swearing, these old people that are deciding on our future when they might be dead within those 5 years. So it's like, um, we there's a few younger politicians, at least up here in the Nordics. Our uh, nature minister, whatever you call it, I think she's 26 or something like that. Probably the youngest politician we have here in Sweden that actually has gotten into the government. And it's really surprising that we don't see a lot more who have ambitions in politics that actually gets up higher, because, as I said, the old people, they don't always know the right stuff that actually should be known. You can just look at American politics, where everything's ruled by old people who know nothing about today and yes,
There,
society
there,
and
com-
how
there,
it
come,
goes.
there comes a point where they become our touch.
Exactly. And it's and if they really are way too much out of touch, should they really be the ones doing decisions for our countries and our futures? But yeah, I think that's the thing I'd like to see a lot more to happen. More ambitious young people going into politics, actually doing stuff, and not just because we have a lot of activists and all that, but I don't find that they do anything good when they're just demonstrating for the most time. Because like, if they're not in the rooms making decisions, their decisions are not going to be met, and yeah, it's really just they don't do much for any country. Like what they're called, Stop Oil or whatever they're called.
Just stop oil.
Yeah, exactly. They've done nothing but make people just want to rev their engines even more. To just fucking despise them. So I'd rather see more um, civilized, I'd say, youth and like less than 30 going into politics, actually taking up stuff that might be important for our future.
I don't know what it's like over there, but I've watched a few things about how it is over here when it comes to certain demographics joining in politics.
Yeah.
And the recurring thing that I hear in quite a few of them is that to be in like Westminster is actually like a really horrible environment. So yeah, the I because I do stand by that. I do say that just anywhere politics would benefit from more youth joining it, but at the exact same time, you need to make sure that the environment they're going into is actually willing to be receptive of them.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, is there like any attitudes or things that others have towards the youth that you wish would change?
Um, uh, I don't know. I feel like people should. I don't know. This. I don't speak too much with old people I don't know, right? But
Nice way
like,
of phrasing that.
but um, I've always felt quite respected by older people because I show them my respect to them, so they always have good attitudes toward me. Uh, and sometimes the attitude they might have for the younger generations, it's kind of fits in sometimes, but sometimes they just go too far about how they feel. Like, um, a lot of the older ones usually see us as less educated and less productive. But I've also met a lot that just find the youth today to be creative. They find us to actually work really hard, at least here in Sweden. Um, like down in Australia, Swedes are actually known for being quite productive workers because we have a lot going there every summer, and he's worked there for a few months. So I've never met anything bad, um, any bad attitude towards younger people. Me personally, at least.
I would say that there you did touch on it where it almost kind of changes from person to person on how they view it. But the thing about some of them viewing it negatively, but they they're in the right, but some take it too far.
Yeah,
I think the issue that some have is that the almost group judgment mentality. They see like one person, I don't know, not doing enough or not not really just spending all their time on their phone or something and not really doing anything aside from that. But they take the mentality of though they take that mentality that they have developed towards that person, like that negative mentality, but then they treat it as a judgment of all.
yeah,
And yeah, there and the counter argument to that is that that happens with every generation. That's not something that's isolated to us. It's that, and I do think sometimes that we get it, we get hit harder by it in some cases. But and yeah, I also don't think that COVID helped in that case because
Yeah.
they've got the mentality of us not being educated enough, and some of us had our exams taken, so it kind of.
Yeah.
But it's almost like a silent judgment that you're in these positions and you've got these, but you should have been doing this, you should have been doing that, and all of that. And it's like, yeah, but that's not the hand we got dealt, and we have to make do with what we got.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think, and there is the whole other case of, yeah, let's touch on that for a moment because the empathetic stuff, circling back to that again, it kind of touches on that. What do you think about youth mental health?
Well, it's kind of bad, I'd say, actually. I know a lot of people who go on like meds and other stuff like that. Because they just don't feel good, right? They're emotionally unstable, lots of them, and I think we've seen a big rise during the 2000s and up. Uh, of just people going on happy meds and other shit like that. I think I saw some stats about 200,000 Swedes, or even more than that. Might be in somewhere between 200,000 and 2 million, very unspecific number. Go on meds daily to just not be suicidal, and that's a bit worrying. And I see a lot of my friends. I have one that paid me to remove an old chandelier holder in her apartment, uh, so she wouldn't hang herself when she got sad. And that's kind of fucked up that a lot of people are just depressed and just see no future for themselves a lot of times. And I think one problem that really hurts everyone is the drug abuse that we can find it in so many places. And it really doesn't help to fix their emotional unstableness.
Yeah, I know
Uh,
that this isn't the maybe the most common thing, but there's probably a small collective there that go onto those unsafe drugs and things like that because they're just so desperate.
yeah,
And yeah, we touched on mental health in the last video, and we were talking about the various different things that could contribute to it, especially in the last few years.
yeah,
Um, like looking out in the world, and
yeah. Like
I,
you see
I,
in other
I,
media,
yeah,
only bad news and
yeah,
all that.
I have noticed there's a lot of chaos going on in Sweden at the moment.
Yeah,
But whilst all that is going on, like there is the factor of social media, and true, but
yeah,
I think the people who think that the only cause of all this is social media are seriously mistaken.
yeah. That's a, it's fucking wild to think only social media is a reason why so many just gets fucked up. I think it has a lot of problem with, as example, abuse from home. Yeah, seeing bad news on all news outlets, and just not finding yourself in life, and it's finding a goal to continue that you will enjoy. Which goes back a little bit of people having no ambitions.
Yeah. Am I going to need to maybe install a swear jar for this or something?
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. I swear a lot, if I'm gonna be honest.
Um, I mean, I'm looking at the things and could bring up like the importance of not dismissing a person's ambition and dreams, but we've touched on that. We've covered on all the notes. Before I go to the little fun final question, is there anything else that you maybe want to touch on or add?
um, no, I think we've gotten most of my thoughts out there.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the fun. This is pretty much the going to be aside from the general focus around like the youth and everything. This
Yeah.
is really going to be the only other part of the podcast that is going to stay the same. And it's just this fun little final question. If you got a job offer that would pay you over 1 million, it's kroner in Sweden, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um, doing but doing a role that you had no real desire or interest in going into, but it also meant that either due to time or because of the work demands, um, you'd have to give up working on the thing you're passionate about. Would you take the offer?
Now that's a really good question, actually. Because like 1 million kronor, it can do a lot for a lot of people's lives. And as a student right now, I think almost any student could say, "Yeah, I'll take 1 million kronor any day, just doing something else." But in the end of it, I'd rather have something I work with that really keeps my passion and desire to keep going than a job that I might not enjoy and that I don't want to work with for the rest of my life. Because fine, go for your passions might be the most important things. Because in the end of it, you only have one life and you should make up for most of it and just enjoy life to the single bit. So I would say I would probably decline that. Just so I can keep doing what I want to do instead.
Alrighty then. Well, that is so far 2 for 2 on rejecting that question.
Hell yeah.
Well, that is pretty much covered everything. Just a little side question. Would you be up for doing this again with other people potentially?
Oh yeah, I would definitely be down for that. I enjoyed this actually.
Awesome to hear.
Yeah.
And okay, so we will wrap things up there. For all those who have still been listening, thank you for sticking it out to the end. And please, if you enjoyed this, comment, like, subscribe, all that usual nice stuff. Follow Fellowmind Books on Facebook and Instagram. And also, please, if you are interested in reading ebooks, please check out the links to the Lulu bookstore in the description, which will have both available books out on ebook format only on Lulu. So Thank you all for listening, and until the next one, welcome to the world of Fellowmind books and the kingdom of Avalas 2. Cheerio.